Hey folks, welcome to this week's episode. I'm joined today by Warren Beazley, all the way from the United Kingdom, England in specifically, right? I just wanted to emphasize that. But yeah, Warren, welcome to the show. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Kevin, it's great to be here. I'm a recruiter. I'm a search consultant, a headhunter. I go by many guises, but essentially I work in the people industry. And I have been working in tech recruitment now since the mid 90s, and I'm the founder of Edison Hill Search, of the tech think tank community. And so some of your audience may also know me as the CTO recruiter on what was Twitter, but now X.
Awesome. So, do you cover the United Kingdom, Europe? What do you normally cover?
I'm global. So we have satellite offices in East Coast and West Coast in the States, as well as a location in London. But I've hired in Southeast Asia, mainland Europe, um, in India, Australia, as well as North America as well. So, but most of my activity tends to be in the United Kingdom, but my net is wide.
I mean, that's quite a far-reaching net, right? For different markets,
Yep.
the way people do business differently, right?
Hmm.
Everybody assumes when you do business, it's the same everywhere, and that's not the case. And obviously, companies are looking for different things, right?
Yep.
So, before we get onto your CTO recruitment stream, um, how did you like get into this? So you said you started to get into tech in the mid 90s. Did you start off in tech, or did it sort of like
No,
transition to it?
no. So I'll try and keep this to a minute, okay? Because if I go on, but I left school at 16. Um, I worked in the street markets of London. So if anyone's familiar with Silicon Roundabout in the city of London, there were some street markets there, White Cross Street, Leather Lane, and I used to sell ladies' fashion, or quite badly made blouses to the city workers, at the time, and I absolutely loved it. I also did a stint selling photocopiers, franking machines, double glazing. I even worked for an agency whose product was selling film locations. So if you had a nice pub in the countryside or a big warehouse, I would go along and sell your location to production companies so they might use it to film in. Um, Worked in Lloyd's of London, the insurance market for a while, and as so many people I know that are successful in the recruitment industry, I came across recruitment by accident. It was an extended family friend said to me, Warren, you should try and go and speak to Mark. Mark was a guy that had a recruitment agency in Bromley, which is a quite a thriving, busy town in South London on the borders with Kent. I visited his offices, not for an interview, but just to get an idea whether it's something I wanted to do, because recruitment was never on my um, list of things to be involved in. And I took a look in the car park, and I'm bearing in mind I'm in my 20s now. A car park that had Aston Martins, Range Rovers, BMWs, Mercedes, Porsches, Ferraris, and I thought, this is intriguing. What's all this about? Recruitment? Can you make money doing recruitment? So I went for an interview. I got the gig, got the role, and I've used this phrase before, and I'm going to use it again. I was like a duck to water. So I've always worked in people industries, and this was people and people. So I was providing people to people, and it was yeah, it's something that I just managed to um, I don't want to be too arrogant, but successful at it straight away. It was a tough environment, and I often use the analogy of a Marco Pierre White or Gordon Ramsay kitchen, where everything was driven by excellence. But if you were wrong, if there was a comma in the wrong place on a CV, and back then we had banks of admin staff who were typing out CVs, and if one went out by incorrectly, and we used fax machines then to transmit. And for your younger audience, I'll let you explain what a fax machine is to them, Kevin. If there was a comma in the wrong place, we would be hauled over the coals, quite literally. So you learnt very quickly, and there was a very high turnover of staff because it wasn't for everybody. It's like being in the army. I spent more time at work than I did with my then wife and young family, and it was a real baptism of fire, sink or swim. Luckily, I swam. My younger brother, who'd also worked in Lloyd's of London, decided he wanted to experience recruitment because I'd been quite successful at it, and we started up on our own within a couple of years, and that journey began in what I would describe as a more transactional, traditional recruitment. But it became evident quite quickly that clients deserved more value. Their expectation level was very low for what the recruitment industry was giving them, and I didn't sit comfortably with me. There was far more that we could do as recruiters. There was a kudos that wasn't there, and I'm sounding like I'm an angel now, but that was the genuine driver, was to improve that, and then we gradually moved towards a more strategic partnership with our clients. And personally, probably in the early 2010, 2011, 2012, my focus then became far more tech leadership hiring. And although I have the CTO recruiter all over my marketing, I'm not driven by job titles or acronyms. For me, it's far more about outcomes. So generically, people that lead technical entities within a business or an organization is my sweet spot, and has been since then. So Edison Hill Search started in 2003, 2004. COVID was pretty interesting for us, but we're very much now a boutique bijou specialist recruiter of all things tech leadership and tech related. I didn't do it in a minute, so I apologize. I hope that
That,
paints a good picture to
uh,
you and your
do you know what?
audience.
That was fantastic, and I love the fact, from street market, right, trader to, right, starting up your own business
Yep.
and having that global reach. For folks outside of a British audience, street trade market sellers, right, are affectionately loved. Right? It's like it's in our DNA, right? Like we love it when we
Only
see
fools and
one of our own.
horses, all that
Yeah,
sort of stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Jason Statham, right? He was another one.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He look at it's like in our DNA. We love to see somebody, get through the ranks, right, and break out. It's a great story.
Absolutely.
Um,
No, it's you learn some very important life lessons, although at the time you probably don't realise it, by the mistakes you made standing in the piggling down the rain, trying to sell clothes to one of the most demanding audiences I've ever known, which are um, the women of the city of London. But that's a podcast on its own for another day.
I know, but it's all experiences that have led you to this point, right?
Absolutely.
So you just mentioned that you used the title CTO as part of the marketing.
Yep.
The tech industry is very good at fixating on particular buzzwords or acronyms, right? That kind of thing. So, like, Was that just more of a, outcomes based is the best way, especially if you're partnering with a organization as
Yep.
well, right? What they're looking for. But how do you recruit a CTO? Like, how do you even get started? How does the requirement come in? Now, when we think of like bigger organizations, they've normally got this organizational board sort of carved
Yeah.
out, right? But
Yeah.
like, what kind of scenarios do you get chucked at you?
So I guess my sweet spot in terms of the type of business that I've had putting most success in, probably from pre-seed up to Series B, Series C, very much tech focused in terms of the product or the service, um, and up to a head count of around 200 or so. That tends to be my sweet spot. Most of my business will be inbound, and it will be through um, efforts that we make through our reputation, basically, where people will come to us for a whole host of different reasons. Very humbling. Very often, CTOs that are leaving will recommend us to find them their replacement, even when we're the agency that have found them their new role as well. So there's several examples of that. Um, but how I would have um, obtained roles to work on back in the mid 90s is completely different to how I do that today.
Was CTO a thing in the 90s?
It was, I mean, CTOs, I think, was first used as an acronym in the 60s. I've got several people in my network who could give you chapter and verse on it, and I can't, and I could try to, but I'm not going to dig a hole for myself. So it's a position that's been about for quite some time. The I guess the key head, if you're seeing the hierarchy for technology when I first got into IT was the IT director.
Yeah.
Don't very often see that as a title, not one that gets broadcast. It's now very much, we want to be. I want to drive my career towards becoming a CTO or a CIO or a CPO or a CTPO, whatever acronym you want to use. But it's all very much C-suite driven now compared to what it used to be. So, um, and you mentioned about how we go about hiring one. I think there's a lot of steps that we would go through before we even have that conversation with a client, um, depending on the phase that they're in as a business. We could be essentially hiring for them a very talented um, full stack web developer who has the name tag of CTO. Um, if it's at the ideas or the MVP stage, and then it's everything from that phase up to enterprise and global domination, where the main responsibilities of a CTO then are justifying a technology strategy to to the board or to shareholders and everything in between. It's all about outcome and where that sits and where that lies in the phase and the growth of a business at that time. So it's definitely not one size fits all. But it's a job role, it's a job title that gets bandied about um, more than any other I can think of at the moment. But it has so many different nuances, levels, and outcomes, and that's the key word for me. Is is outcome. One of the first questions I will ask a founder or a CEO who's looking to engage us is, do they know, or are they aware of who the best in class tech leaders, CTOs are in their niche? And I'm using the North American pronunciation of niche there, by the way, in case I confuse anybody. Um, and I would say 90% of CEOs and founders that I speak to don't know. And if there's a tip that I'm going to give to any CEOs and founders out there, is that you should know. Whether you engage someone like me, you should know who the best in class leaders, CTOs are in your industry before you you need one. Having weekly coffees with people that you never end up employing is a trait of some of the most successful CEOs that I know. And they will build it into their diary to have either a coffee or a virtual coffee with somebody that's come up on their radar within their sector, who's doing things with the competition, but just to make sure that both parties are aware of each other. And these are things that don't get done often enough. But it's one of the first questions I ask a new client.
That's really interesting because a lot of people would think the emphasis is on the candidate, right? Actually, I suppose it shows strong leadership and due diligence if the CEO, right, who's not expected to be technical, by the way, sometimes they are, right?
Mm.
Maybe they're the founder, right? But if you don't know, you don't know, and having those virtual coffees is probably a great place to start, right? It's neutral
Yeah,
territory. They can get some insights. They can figure out what good looks like.
absolutely. It is, as I said, it's a really fundamental trait of far too few um, founders and leaders, that they don't do this. And I think on the other side of the other flip of the coin, from a CTO's perspective, is that they need to do more to reverse the their position of being the best kept secret in their sector or niche. And they don't need to do anything that's going to make their current bosses think that they're looking. Absolutely not. But there are subtle things that they can do that will bring them to the attention of these founders, of these CEOs that would, are intrigued and want to make an introduction to you, because it's far easier to find your next role, your dream role, when you're working than when you're not. And that's sounds a bit like an oxymoron to a degree, but that is in essence is again something very powerful that I see from candidates that do invest in this, that do that, and it absolutely bears fruit for them.
So we'll get onto that because I feel like there's going to be some golden insights there. But when we talk about CTOs, there's different types, right? Or I'm going to say
Yeah,
classes. I'm not going to say classes. I don't think that's the right terminology, but if we think of big organizations, like especially in the UK, we think banking straight away, right? As the
yep,
forefront, right? And we think of a CTO in there. But then to your point, a startup needs a CTO. And you just mentioned, right? We've got a incredible software engineer, right? Or whatever it is. And we need some, hands-on deep technical leadership. And they have the job title of CTO. How do you see that scale? Like, I work with enterprise architects.
yeah,
Technically, they could be CTOs, right?
absolutely, yeah.
So, what have you seen from that point of view?
I think okay, it's down to an individual's desire, their personal goals. I will have conversations with enterprise architects, with um, senior engineers who say, I want to be a CTO. And they could be working at an enterprise business, a HSBC, one of the big players at the moment. And I will tell them, well, depending on the type of organization that you're focusing your attention on, you're already doing the job of what would be expected from a CTO. And it's about aligning that out, your expectation with the outcome or the expected outcome from a client. Now, there is I guess, a generic expected level of a CTO, what I call a serious CTO, which is um, a role that is, in essence, if you like, a bridge between the business and the technical piece. That the core responsibilities lie around strategic responsibility and leadership responsibility. And there's nobody else in that organization that has any responsibility for technology. The buck will stop with you. Now, that again, depending on the organization, can mean a whole different raft of experiences, of nuances. But for me, great talent is transferable. If you're able to deliver an outcome in a particular industry sector, you should be able to deliver that same outcome to any other industry sector. And there's a lot of imposter syndrome with senior tech leaders. There are in all walks of life, but it seems particularly in senior tech leaders. And sometimes they just need to be reminded of a great job that they've done, and to promote themselves accordingly, with a wider audience. But it really is not a one size fits all process, outcome, business response. It isn't. It's about outcome, and it's specifically tailored to what a client's expectations really are. It's only once we can establish that as a headhunter, as a search consultant, and really get under the bonnet, that we can take that to market and find the right person. But we're going through an anomaly at the moment, and you may already be mindful of this, Kevin, is that when I take that message to market 5 years ago, we would never have expected. In fact, one of the questions that we ask a client is, particularly if they're hiring at senior level, and I'm going to use that acronym again with CTO, one of the questions that we would ask is, do you expect your CTO that we're going to find for you to be out of work, or do you expect them to be delivering now, for all intents and purposes, for the competition? Now,
yeah,
right now in 2025, the anomaly is that there are some excellent tech leaders who are between roles through no fault of their own, who are essentially looking for work for the first time since they graduated with a computer science degree back in the 80s. And there are some excellent people out there. And this is, as I said, is an anomaly. I haven't seen this probably in nearly 30 years, as evident as it is right now. And to back that up, and I'll give you an extreme to prove a point, even 2 years ago, if I was retained by a business to hire their CTO, we would advertise the role. We don't advertise the role to find people. It sounds, again, a little bit of an odd statement to say. It's more of a branding exercise. But even so, we may have 30 to 50 people that would respond to that advert over a period, say, of a month. If you said to me today, Warren, I want to retain you to find us our new CTO, and I advertise the role today, we'd be looking at a figure of closer to or over 1,000 that would respond to that. And whether that's that there's a lower barrier to entry, whether it's a lot easier to apply now with just one click of a button, or whether it's just the fact that there's a lot of people out there, but we'll still throw Pareto in. 80% of the candidates sadly won't be relevant for one reason or another. but that's still 200 people that are potentially suitable for a role. And that throws in other challenges as well, because it's now a case of the screening has to be really efficient. And we don't rely on AI bots to do that. But we also have the pool of candidates that we found proactively. And for every role we hire for, we will do a deep dive market search, map out the market completely for every single company, similar to our client, um, and we will know who each of those CTOs are, and we will approach each of those as well as those individuals that have come in. And it's, for me, it's making people like me aware of who you are, making me aware, or making me want to contact someone like yourself, someone that's delivering and doing an excellent job for my clients' competition.
I've heard the analogy before. It's like F1 race car drivers, right? Like if you're if you're on an opposing team, right? It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter if you're not winning, right? Potentially, because there's always the
Yep.
top five, right?
Yep.
But if you're in the competition, it's better than you being in the bystanders, right? Like, and it's, I think that's always been the way, personally, from my experience. But I do agree with you. These once in a generation rifts that we used to see, right? And I've lived through a couple now. And, you know, if I compare it to historically, like my family probably experienced, things are different now. And it's fast and furious as well. So you think there's stability and then it goes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I must. It is definitely we're on shifting sands at the moment in terms of the job market, the job industry, and it still hasn't settled down yet.
No.
Um, and it's not a great time to be looking for a new role, but there are things happening out there, and it is slowly getting better. And so for those people now that are watching, who are um, in a role, who are working, there are definitely things you can do to make people like me and founders and CEOs aware of what you're doing. But if you are between roles as well, don't lose heart, because there are things that you can do that are go over and above the hamster wheel of here's my resume, let's find a job advert and let's chase that advert, um, and hopefully I'll be one of the lucky few from the thousand that get selected. That isn't, what's the word I'm looking for? That is not the desirable way to do it. And there are other ways. There are other options that people have to take ownership. Just not enough do it. But as I said, it is easier to do it when you're working rather than when you're between roles. But it's still very possible once you find yourself in that position as well.
So I think we should get onto that next bit, right? About what people can do. Back to your story earlier about how you had people type out CVs. We call them in the UK or resumes. If I think back to my early career, I'm never going to be an author, Warren. Right? It's my
Mm.
wife reminds me. Right? I'm so glad that we've got all these technologies, right, to help me write stuff now. But if it wasn't for recruiters at the time, right, going, yeah, that's like, and they were probably trying to be kind on the telephone because that's what you used to do. You used to apply and give them a call, right? You know, I don't think if I would have based all my success on my CV or resume, you know, I don't think I'd be where I am today, right? So that's probably I'm trying to be as nice as possible to myself there, right? So what other things can people do, right? Like you said, like what can people do to sort of elevate themselves, make themselves more visible, I
Okay.
suppose? You know, is
So
it you know?
there is there is a process. A what I call the 5-step process to taking ownership of your career journey, of being proactive, not relying on that hamster wheel. And I'll go through them briefly now. And those 5 steps, the first is answering this question, which is simply, what value will you bring your next employer or your new employer? Now, when I say that to somebody, very often the reply would be something like, and I'm paraphrasing now, oh, okay, well, I've been at my current role for 15 years. I've never had a day off sick. The founders trust me implicitly, and I know everybody's round when we go to the pub off by heart. Okay, now I'm being a bit facetious here. All right. That's not what I mean. What I mean by value is a tangible outcome to what it is that you and your team deliver for your current employers. And the most powerful way to measure that is through currency. So, for example, if you're delivering a SaaS solution, it would be something like, from a standing start, within a year, my team and I can create a product-led SaaS solution that generates circa 10 million in ARR. And then if you can't get a tangible currency figure, then it will need to be an improvement in measured in percentages or measured in time or an impact on EBITDA, but something tangible, because the people that are going to be interested in yourself primarily are worried about, I was going to say 2 things, but ultimately it's one thing, and that is ROI. What are they going to get from you? So if you can lead it front and center, that's the answer to the first question. The second question is simply, okay, demonstrate where you've done it. And once you can do that, you can then create your own elevator pitch. So I help businesses generate by delivering, and be mindful of that. And then you park that to one side. So that's the first 2 steps. And then the next stage is, for me, a real key element, is accepting that you are the best kept secret in what it is that you do. Because you may not be, but that's what you've got to mentally tell yourself. This is the mindset shift. And you're on a journey where today nobody knows what you do. And we're going to get you on a journey where the target or the destination is for you to become recognized as an expert in your field, a minor celebrity, if you like, in your niche area. Somebody is recognized as an industry expert, and you then have to understand who ideal client profile would be to get most value from your answer to question 1. Okay, and they're the people that you need to make, you need to be not a secret to. I've worded that terribly. Let me give you an analogy. If you can imagine the CEO or a founder of a business that you have recognized are potentially going to be an ideal type of client to get value from what it is that you do. And the CEO has a meeting with the CTO, and the CTO says, I'm leaving, I'm going somewhere else. And there's nothing you can do to change my mind. The CEO schedules a meeting with the rest of the C-suite, and he will announce that the CTO is leaving. The next question the CEO invariably will then ask everyone else in the room is, who do you know? And it's your job to be on the lips of those people in the room. Do that in a way that does not raise suspicion if you are currently working, to your current employers. In fact, it does the opposite. It will actually raise your reputation and the reputation of your employer if you do it correctly. So it's about, I mentioned a moment ago that when we find a CTO for a client, we map out all of the relevant CTOs working for the competition. So the job of the CTO or tech leader themselves is to get a real good grip on who those organizations are, who the people are within those organizations who could get real value from what it is that they do. And then using something like good old LinkedIn, you invite them into your network. And you're starting to bring people into your network who are relevant. Now, whether your network has worked for you in the past in terms of finding you jobs, which it should have done if you're a CTO, unless you are actively working on your network, it will wither away. Okay. And one of the key things I will say to say, this is the third part of I've got to there in the end. The third step in the process is every day you need to invite into your network at least 20 people who will be in a decision-making position within one of your ideal clients. Now, you can use LinkedIn, and I'm sorry to go harp on about LinkedIn, but whether or not you're a lover of Microsoft, which I know, of course, you are, Kevin,
Oh
they've done
yes.
they've done an amazing job with LinkedIn. They really have, and it's a one-stop shop for you to market your brand and your product, and that brand and product is yourself. So as a CTO, you understand what your value proposition is, you know confidently where you've done it, and now you need to decide what kinds of organizations, and you decide by geography, by headcount, by industry sector, by whether they've recently had funding, whatever it might be, your criteria, put that into LinkedIn and it will give you a list of thousands of organizations. And when you use LinkedIn, they don't call them companies, they call them accounts. And what LinkedIn does very well is it will automatically identify within those companies who the key decision makers are. And they call those individuals the leads. And it's the leads, those individuals, that you need to invite into your network. 20 a day, every day. Build it into your routine. So once you start doing that, your network is growing not by people that you used to go to school with, or by somebody that owns the hairdressers in your town. These are relevant people who could get value from what it is that you do. And you're assuming all the time that every single person that accepts your invitation can't sleep at night because they have a particular chaos roadblock in their business that only you and what it is that you do can resolve. It's likely that not everybody is going to be like that, but that's your mindset. You have to think that all of these people are struggling to get a good night's sleep, and I'm the solution to that issue through the outcome of what it is that I do. So it is a process. Build momentum, 20 people a day. Once you start doing that, this is probably the part of the process that raises most eyebrows. It's sharing your knowledge or creating content. And a lot of tech leaders that I know are very humble, slightly introvert, don't like putting their head above the parapet. But one of the things they could say to me would be, Warren, no one's interested in X, Y, Z. What I do, this, whoa, stop there. And there's very few times where I very, very, very nearly come close to sharing an expletive on a professional phone call, but that's the time I would. It's because the anecdotes, the stories that these individuals that have been doing this technology role for 20, 30 years have hundreds of anecdotes, hundreds of stories that they can share with people. And it's the organizations that fit that ideal client profile that it's gonna really resonate with. And as long as your stories have a thread running through them all, and that thread is your knowledge, it doesn't really matter. I would even throw in some personal stuff. People like to see what makes you tick. They even like to see a little bit of vulnerability. No more than 20% of the content that you put out there, but text-based content, writing out a few things, which is most of the content that I share. If you want to do video, do videos. If you've got recommendations that you get from previous colleagues, you want to write a post on that and the story behind it. There's loads and loads of different ways of creating content. I mean, obviously today's again a subject matter for another podcast of the types of content, but it is not that difficult. The algorithm for LinkedIn has changed, and it seems to be changing constantly. 2 years ago, we'd have been having this chat. I'd have been saying to you, you need to post once a day, ideally, at least every other day. That's changed. One of the negatives about posting content is that you have no control over who sees it. Yes, the aim is rather like having your company website on Google or Bing, is that you want to get to the top of the search index when you do a search. You want to get your content to the top of the news feed of your new network that you're growing every day with 20 people. The key thing is consistency. So if you can only commit to doing a piece of content once a week, that's fine. Do it once a week. LinkedIn will begin to recognize that every week Kevin posts something, and they kind of expect you to do it once a week to keep up with that algorithm. If you can do it every other day, that's also great. So there's no hard and rigid rules that this is what you got to do. So that's the fourth step, if you like. But outside of LinkedIn, I would encourage you to create your own webpage with a biography of what you do, saying proudly that you're the CTO of XYZ PLC, so that it's another place that people can find you, clearly indexing your role, what you do, what you like, that you like kittens and you like going out for walks in the countryside and all that other stuff, not raising suspicion to your current employer, and building that into a routine, however frequently you're able to do it. Okay, so that's the fourth thing. And the last thing, which is really where LinkedIn puts the emphasis now. They want to be seen as a social network, like X, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all the other platforms that are out there. And it's how you interact with your network. So if you have somebody accept an invite for a particular company, you're rather excited because this particular company you've admired for years, and the CEO has just accepted your invite. Now, this is what I call ethical stalking. Now, that's my phrase. So if I see it anywhere else on the internet, I know someone's stolen it from me. There's no copyright on it. And it's simply this, that when you identify somebody that's come into your network that you're really excited about, you can go into their profile and you can see all of their interactions. And then one of the other great things that LinkedIn allows you to do is select your your new network from people that are active on LinkedIn, not people that have never been on it or haven't touched their profile in 5 years. It will ask you whether you want people that are active within the last 90 days. So ideally, somebody that posts stuff or shares other people's stuff, and you have the opportunity then of actually putting your head above the parapet to them by liking their posts, by making comments on their posts, by making comments on other people's comments. On somebody writes a comment on a post and you don't agree with it, or you agree with it, as long as it's done in a professional manner, no keyboard warriors, then these are the interactions you should be having. And the target on a daily basis is you should be having at least 10 interactions. An entry level one is a like or a celebrate, just clicking the emoji. But ideally, you want to be making comments. And the comments shouldn't be great post. They should be sharing your knowledge again. They should be giving an opinion and prompting a conversation. End the comment with a question and a question mark if you can. Let's engage with people. And as long as it's coming from a knowledge base, you will begin to be noticed by that individual. And that is, and I've gone over that as quickly as I can without going into too much detail, but they're the 5 steps that I encourage everybody to start doing.
I love that. So, think about step 1, it's outcomes, right? What value have you driven back? You got to check your audience, right? At the end of the day, every technology person likes to speak about the technology, but it's actually about the business outcomes, right? So how are you going to drive value? Because it's essentially what the shareholders want to see, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line, right? With any organization, it's keep the shareholders happy, right? At the end of the day, or investors. So how do you translate that? I really like the idea of sort of raising your visibility. I think you've offered some. I feel like you need to do a course on that, Warren, as a sideline project.
There is one, but anyway, sorry. Okay. I don't like to promote these things. I'm far too humble.
I literally didn't know that, by the way, just for our listeners. But like, I've learned some stuff there, so I thought that was fantastic. So there's some bits and pieces around that, and really knowing your audience, and to your point, knowing the company, the competition, right? Especially from a leader and from the candidate point of view.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I got into like LinkedIn in 2017,
Right.
and it's not as popular then it is now, right? It seems to be like this is where you go, right? And to your point, it's very easy to network. You can send people messages. You can do bits and pieces. You can do a lot of research, right, on there. So get on there, make sure your profile is correct, straight, up to date. I've even heard snippets like, if you're doing a job now but you want a different job, then you can project that, right, without your boss getting too too involved, right, around it as well. You can do that a little bit as well.
There is, what I would say to you and your audience, Kevin, is that LinkedIn is probably the highest value online real estate that there is, by none, because it costs nothing unless you want to pay for it. If I go onto Google or Bing and type in CTO recruitment, my website, Edison Hill Search, will be out in the ether, 10 pages down. My LinkedIn profile normally appears on the first 1 or 2 pages. It gives so much, I don't know the exact SEO phrase to use, but it gives so much importance to LinkedIn as an indexing thing. And what I would encourage people to do with their LinkedIn is stop thinking of it as their online CV or resume.
For sure.
Start thinking of it as their landing page for their business, their product, and their business is them and the outcome that they deliver for their clients. And make sure that their ideal clients are going to read something and it's going to be led with what's in it for them, not look at me, what I can do. It's more around, this is what you'll get if you were to employ me. And again, if you're working, you can do it subtly. So it's not obvious that you're considering your options. I would argue that everybody's considering their options at some degree, but yeah, give LinkedIn the credibility that it actually deserves. I know it doesn't have a great name with everybody, but it's a very, very powerful tool. And if you start to do these changes, you'll be in 4-5% of your sector, because very, very few people do. But it's such a massive thing if you can get to grips with it. I would point anybody to my LinkedIn page, my LinkedIn profile, to get an idea of how that's set out, because, excuse me, that is how I encourage CTOs and tech leaders to reflect their LinkedIn profile as well. And a lot of them has a lot of the recommendations on my profile will be from people that have taken that advice on, and it has made a difference. It's not just hot air or rhetoric. It does work. But it's a bit like going to the gym. As you can see, I don't. But if you go to the gym, I'm told you have to go a lot and regularly for it to make a difference. And it's the same with this 5-step process.
Consistency.
100%.
That's awesome. So, if that's the stuff that does work, what should people avoid? What are your top two things people should try and avoid, right? I don't know.
Okay.
Put them
This
on
is a
the
real
put them on the
contentious
bin
one.
list, right? The trash list, whatever you want to call it.
Okay. I'm going to get hauled over the coals for this one.
Go for it.
And I'm only 51% against it. Okay. And I have debates on a weekly basis with both CTOs and my peers from within my industry about it. And it's when I see a tech leader who I know personally, he's an excellent individual with a wonderful track record between roles, and they put the green LinkedIn halo around their picture saying that they are open to work. Now, there are words that I can use that resonates with me when I see that, but it's a bit harsh because, I'm not sitting in these people's shoes. All I would say is that if you've got it on your profile and you're not getting the outcomes you want, take it off, see what happens. And I guess conversely, which is where the 49% comes in, if you don't have it on and you're not getting any outcome, maybe put it on for a week, see if it makes a difference. But I don't like it. You can tell recruiters if you're open to work behind
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
facade of without putting the green halo on. I think all the green halo does is just let everyone know that you're looking for a job. And if you're a solution to a problem, if you are a product that is going to bring order to chaos, I think you deserve better for yourself than promoting the fact that you're out of work. And even though you may be, okay, and don't get me wrong, I support individuals that are and do all I can to help them. I just find it, for me, more in line with what they're looking to achieve when it's not on there. So that's I guess my tip for candidates, for CEOs, for founders, for investors who are looking to hire. And if I've already mentioned it already, I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but they must be able to answer the question of why would you leave where you are at the moment and come and join us? And they must be able to answer that succinctly, um, with passion, but also openly, warts and all. But they must be able to pitch that to somebody, verbalize it to somebody. And when I speak to a lot of CEOs and a lot of founders, and I ask them, okay, if we're speaking to somebody that's working for the competition, why should they leave there and join you? We might better give them a bit more money, or we might better give them some equity. Spoiler alert, money is important, but most people I know don't leave for money. They leave for role. They leave for opportunity, and they leave for doing something that will make them want to jump out of bed in the morning, run down the stairs if their office is at home, into the home office, or down to the train station or into the car. But you get my drift. And that is my tip for CEOs and founders and investors. Get that message absolutely, and from the top down. Make sure everybody, stakeholders in your business, are all aware of that message. This is why people should come and work for us. This is what we're about. This is our, sorry, Simon Sinek, we're great mates. That is the why. And you need to be able to reel it off. They're my 2 tips.
Fantastic. And I'm with you on the first one. Like
cool.
the green halo.
It's a tough call.
Yeah. It's a tough call because when you're in that scenario, you just I'm going to try everything.
Absolutely.
Right. You've got to put food on the table, whatever it is, right? And you just like, I want to try everything. But actually, it's a form of advertising, but it's probably the wrong kind of advertising. Right, like it's a difficult one. I feel like we could debate this for hours.
Listen, I would love nothing more than somebody off the back of this podcast to message me and say, Warren, you're wrong. I have the green halo and I found a job, and I will be absolutely cock a hoop.
Oh, for sure.
I really would be. I want to be proved wrong, but I guess first impressions are important. And the first impression, the gut, when I see it, is that I guess for less roles that are not as high up the hierarchy within a business as that, it may be a less impactful because of what a CTO is driving. So it may not apply as strongly down the hierarchy, but certainly at CTO and tech leadership level, I'm yet to be convinced that they should be on there. But I'm glad we're on the same page, Kevin.
Yeah, that's just my experience, right? More than anything. So you've got both sides of the table there, right? As I like to call it. So, but Warren, it was amazing having you on. Where can people find you? I'm sure it's going to be LinkedIn, but is that the best place to try and find you?
Yeah. So LinkedIn. I mean, if you're a tech leader, CTO, and you're looking for some advice, if you're between jobs or you want some advice around a crossroads in your career that you see coming up, go to my LinkedIn profile, and there are numerous ways that you can schedule into my diary as well. By email, warren@edisonhillsearch.com, by good old X, and this is the creative part of me. It's at the CTO recruiter. Hope you like that one. And they're probably the easiest ways for people to get hold of me. And the website, edisonhillsearch.com as well. They can get hold of me there.
Awesome. I'll include it in the show notes as well. Right. Make sure you can find Warren. I've been following Warren for a couple of years. And even the anecdotal stuff is amazing. Right. So I again, from personal experience, just following people, you can get inspiration, right? And thought-provoking content. So go ahead and check him out. Again, thank you again, Warren, for coming on, and thanks to our listeners, and we'll catch you on the next episode. So goodbye for now.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Code to Cloud podcast, where ideas meet innovation and the future of tech takes flight. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your network. Let's keep building the tech community together. For more insights, resources, and updates, follow us on social media or visit us at codetocloud.io. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, And remember, every line of code has the potential to shape the future. See you in the cloud.